Do you understand that? This is the same God that poured out his wrath and killed every firstborn like that. Do you understand that's the same God, that nothing's changed? He's still the same God. You and I think in our mind, how in the world could that ever happen? Let me give you an idea. When you look at Genesis chapter 6 and you see the whole earth had corrupted itself before the Lord, and you see that everything was corrupt, do you understand that the same God that took them into that ark and shut that door behind Noah, because Noah couldn't have it on his mind that he shut out everybody, but it was God that poured out his judgment, his wrath, and shut everything. He didn't leave it for Noah to have to think in his mind and wonder, did I have to do this? Did I have to? No, God shut the door and he poured out his wrath. Don't you understand? Babies screaming and crying like that, only drowning. Human beings drowning, choking on their own, on the water that's coming in their lungs as the waters fill up and they are flooded and they are all killed and destroyed. This is that God's wrath and anger against sin. And it's the same God. He hasn't changed. He's the same God. Could you imagine that? I wonder if God made it so he couldn't hear anything. They just kept floating kind of out there and they didn't hear anything. Because could you imagine the screams as that water kept going up and these people were running for their lives? They were running and heading to mountains. They were running to try to get to mountains to be spared from the wrath, and there was no remedy. And I'm telling you, sinner, there is a day coming where there will be no remedy. There'll be no remedy. There will be none. There will be no chance to change your mind. There will be no chance to say, man, maybe I should think about this religion thing now. Maybe I should think about this thing of Jesus Christ. Maybe I should think about this redemption. Maybe I should. No, it's too late. Just like when that door was slammed shut and the waters came up. You know, they probably thought it was okay for a while, didn't they? Well, hey, this is kind of weird, but I think we'll be okay. We'll just kind of swim around in this and see what's going on here. I'm not sure about all this. But then when the waters kept rising, and they kept rising and rising and rising, where no human being could go anywhere in the earth to get away from that water, and they watched their loved ones drown to death. How would you like to have been the last person? And do you understand that God heard their cries, and he did nothing but laugh at their calamity? It says that in the day of his judgment, he'll laugh at their calamity. You don't like that, do you? Well, God doesn't like giving his only begotten Son to die on the cross for wicked sinners and then spit on his sacrifice and try to do an inroad around the cross of Jesus Christ to get there some other way and to have forgiveness of sins some other way. To laugh and mock and scoff at his prophets and at his word and at his book for day in and day out for thousands of years, to mock that God till finally God has had enough and he pours his wrath upon them. And that's what he did there. He gave them 500 years. They had all the time in the world. They could have repented and got right, but none of them did and none of them wanted to. The whole earth had corrupted themselves before, and they were given over to a reprobate mind, and they didn't care anyway. You could preach and you could preach and you could preach, and it didn't matter to them because they still cursed God. And I imagine they weren't crying out for God's mercy. I bet you they were doing what they're going to be doing right in Revelation. They're going to shake their fist at heaven, and they're going to scream at God, and they're going to mock him, and they will not repent of their fornication, nor their sorceries, nor their witchcrafts, but they'll shake their fists, and the wrath of God will be poured around